Hello, theologians. I hope everything's going well. We're going to continue to look at Anthony Hoekema's book. We're finishing up soteriology. And as we look at this idea of sanctification this week, I want to sort of just give a couple ideas about some practical way that justification and sanctification work together. A lot of times when I was in a pastoral function officially, but even now as a professor, I still have a lot of students swing by asking questions about, their life. And obviously there's some issues going on with, uncertainty about maybe where they are with God. And one diagnostic question that I like to ask is this, if I were to sit down with God and ask him what he thinks of you, what would God say? Does God like you? Does God not like you? And a lot of times, the most common answer you get is that, God would not be very pleased with me because I haven't read the Bible enough. I'm not praying enough. I'm not going to church. I'm not whatever, right? And so it's this idea that if I were a better person, then somehow God would be happier with me. He would be more pleased with me, basically, right? To do more good stuff, do less bad stuff. God is happy with me. And I can empathize with that because I spent a lot of time in my life as sort of under legalism. And you just sort of see, because you're not keeping the law well enough, you just, all the other legalists are upset with you. And so that, you should be doing better. Okay. And so part of what I think is happening here is that we have this view where we've conflated justification and sanctification together, right? And so again, justification is this idea that when you become a believer, God has declared you righteous. 2 Corinthians 5:21, Jesus took our sin, we received his righteousness. And so when this happens, God looks at you and says, I see you through the righteousness of Jesus Christ. Sanctification, on the other hand, is this idea that we're becoming more holy. It's a process, right? And so part of the idea of what's happening here, I think, and I have a very, very high-tech visual aid here, okay? So I have justification, sanctification, right? And these are two elements of salvation, okay? And what happens is if you conflate the two, you end up with legalism. Okay, and legalism is the problem that is happening in Galatians. And when Paul is looking at these people, they're saying, you know what, you were justified by Jesus Christ, and now you're finding out that there's all these rules, sanctification type rules that you could be doing, circumcision, all this kind of stuff. And the problem is you're seeing that this is a condition of this, or this is a condition of this, right? And it becomes legalistic, like you, excuse me. So it's like you have to keep kosher, you have to do circumcision, you have to do this stuff, and it becomes legalism, all right? And on the other hand, if you take sanctification and justification and you totally remove them from each other, you end up with antinomianism. And I think I spelled that right. I'm not really sure. I think I did. So, in other words, antinomianism is this idea that it doesn't matter what you do. You're absolutely free to do anything you want because of God's grace. You can just eat, drink, and be merry because God accepts you. So it doesn't matter what you do, okay? And one of the verses in Galatians 5, and again, I think Galatians is, for me, the clearest picture of what it means to have a balanced view between sanctification and justification. And in Galatians 5 specifically, that chapter is super powerful because around verse 13, Paul says, you are free, but don't let your freedom become an opportunity to indulge in the flesh, right? So in other words, enjoy your freedom because God sees you as justified. And that is so freeing when you understand it, okay? But he says it's possible to, if you don't have a proper view of what God has done in you, if you forget about the sanctification, then you end up with this antinomianism as indulgence of the flesh, right? And it's interesting that both, I figure this right, both legalism and antinomianism are both issues of a focus on yourself, right? Because legalism is looking at yourself, am I keeping all the laws? Antinomianism is looking at yourself saying, hey, I'm just going to enjoy life. But what Paul says on the other, in the rest of that verse is that don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature, right? Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. And this is really powerful, because when you realize, like, if I'm focused on myself legalistically, or I'm focused on myself antinomianismally, I don't know if that's a word or not, you end up just focusing on you. But when you have a proper balance, and maybe this is a way that we know we have a proper balance, is that you are figuring out how to serve other people, right? It's outwardly focused. This is exactly Paul's point in Philippians, where it talks about Jesus giving up his rights to, the glory of God, and he totally puts on constraints, right? As a human, as a servant, as someone who's dying on the cross, right? All of these are constraints that he's voluntarily putting on himself to serve other people, to love other people. And so I think as we think about this, this is a kind of a good way, if we're ministering to somebody and, ask them this diagnostic question, what does God think of you? He's upset with me. Remind them of justification, right? Remind them of how God sees them. But also remind them that sanctification is an important part. And if you put it in the proper balance, and the way to really measure that is, how do you view the way you're being sanctified? Is it just so you become a better person, or is it that you are able to serve other people better? Okay, so just some ideas. I've talked way too long. Just a reminder, we have the Luther Galatians commentary, and I'm asking you to do like a sermon series or Bible study series on that, and to just sort of, think through how you would present messages on that. Look forward to seeing how you do that. Let me know if you have any questions on that, and I hope everything's going well for you guys. Hang in there, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.